Water is life. What do you mean by that? I don't even know what that one's about. Who disagrees with water? What is? If anything, you guys are the ones that are always talking about rising sea levels, more water. Water's life, baby. What if I want the polar ice caps to melt? It's more life. Rising sea levels, more like rising life levels. I don't know what that means. Can someone with that sign on their lawn, please, in the comments, let me know what water is life means? Is that a reference to Flint, Michigan, who has received tens of billions of dollars from the United States government and the state of Michigan, and after over a decade has still not fixed their issue, which, may I remind you, they caused in the first place? I actually saw that tweet today too about Flint, Michigan. The obligatory, it's down to like once a year now, but about once a year, some woke person on Twitter will tweet, "Yo, they still don't have clean water in Flint, Michigan. Let that sink in." Yeah, let that sink in. They've been given every possible resource by the national government, shall I say the federal government, the state government, and including their own resources that any viable city should in theory have. But I mean, that's obviously aside the question. That's off the table for any major city in the country, is that they could actually be self-sufficient or not completely destroy their, irrigation systems to begin with. Is just too tall of an order for a city like Flint, Michigan. So, okay, you fucked it up. And then you were given every possible resource and dollar and then some to fix it, and you haven't. After over 10 years, it's got to be over a decade at this point. I mean, the Flint, Michigan thing is like one of the oldest tricks in the book at this point, is it not? I can't even remember a time when the Flint, Michigan water wasn't a thing. I feel like it was like I was in high school. And then you Google it. Let's just Google that real quick. How much money has Flint, Michigan received to fix water supply? Let's see. 10 years ago, smiling politicians posed for cameras while pushing a button, swapping the main tap water source for this majority black, impoverished city to the Flint River. The untreated water that started flowing from residents' taps would become contaminated when it corroded the pipes. Okay. For years afterwards, the city's water was tainted with lead, a human-made crisis that became emblematic of how poorer communities of color in the United States could fall victim to government mismanagement. Well, what government did this? Did the state of Michigan go in and say, hey, it'd be a hilarious joke because, Flint, Michigan is majority black. We should change their water source to the Flint River, which we know is contaminated, because that would just really piss them off. Like, what politicians was it? Could it perhaps have been anything to do with the government in power in Flint, Michigan, who I'm going to go out on a limb here and suggest is definitely 100% Democrat, by the way. Anyone want to take any bets on that? It's 10 years ago. That's 2014. When was this article written? This article is written this year, April 24th, 2024. 4/24/24. I remember that day. I remember saying that on that day. Okay, here we go. A historic moment. On April 25th, 2014, then Mayor Dane Walling and other officials toasted with glasses of water, boring, to celebrate switching from Detroit's water system to the Flint River, part of a cost-cutting move that was estimated to save the cash-strapped city about $5 million in less than 2 years. Tapping from the Flint River was meant to be an interim source until Flint could join a new system accessing water from Lake Huron. You sure you want to get your water from Lake Huron? That sounds even worse than Flint. It's a historic moment for the city of Flint to return to its roots and use our own river as our drinking water supply, Walling said at the ceremony as he died of lead poisoning, drinking his glass of Flint River. Let's look up who Dane Walling is. Dane Walling. Okay, so Dane Walling is an American politician who was a mayor of Flint from 2009 to 2015. He is nonpartisan, it says here. Oh, wait, no. Political party, Democrat. Okay. Let's look at the Flint City Council. Let's look at the current Flint City Council and let's see how many Republicans are in there. Let's see how many racist water is not life Republicans are in the Flint City Council. Flint City Council. Okay, City Council, City of Flint. Okay. So, okay, it looks about, half black, half white, but let's take a guess at what the party alignment of these people are. The point is, folks, that I'm going to guess that the city of Flint, Michigan is a Democrat-run city. And I'm going to guess that the fact that they switched over from the Detroit water system to their own, the Flint River, without looking into it, like I'm not sure. That's a big decision, right? You would have to imagine. Switching over an entire city's water system to another major body of water. I'm imagining there's a lot of building that goes on there. Like you have to construct or at least rehabilitate plants that, take in the water, filter the water, process it, whatever goes into that, which I'm sure is a lot. I'm sure you don't just hook up a big McDonald's straw to the river and say, all right, run it, boys. No, there's obviously a lot that goes into a water system for a city, a major metropolitan area. And at no point did we ever bother looking into whether or not this was safe. Is this water drinkable? We are about to switch over the entire city's water system from the perfectly fine Detroit water system, as far as I know. I've never really heard anybody talk about Detroit, Michigan's water. As far as I'm aware, Detroit, Michigan's water is one of the few things in that city that seems to be okay. But they wanted to switch over to the Flint River for a temporary time to cut costs. It's going to save the city $5 million, according to them, over the course of 2 years. Okay. As far as cities go, that doesn't really sound like a lot. $5 million. That's like one home. That's like one really nice home in a good part of town, right? Like if you have a mini mansion in the richest part of Flint, Michigan, it could be flirting with, $4 or $5 million, right? If you have a nice plot of land. I don't know the city that well, but $5 million for a city doesn't sound like that much. Let me just make sure that was the amount. Yeah. It's going to save the cash-strapped city about $5 million in less than 2 years. $2.5 million a year. Yeah, I don't... That's not all... That seems like a major thing to do for $5 million if you're a city. If I did something for myself that was going to make me $5 million over the next 2 years, I'd be pretty stoked. Like, but if I made $5 million over the next 2 years, I'm not even sure that would last me like the rest of my own life, unless I like planned accordingly. Right? Like if I have like mortgage payments and car payments and medical insurance and home insurance and everyday life expenses, and like just want to live like a mildly normal life. Like I want to get like a decent home. I'm a millionaire. I got $5 million in the bank. You know, obviously if I invested wisely and kept it in the bank and lived off the interest, I could do that maybe, you know. But like, if I only ever made that $5 million, I don't think it would last me very long unless I was like smart about it. You know, pretty sure you can blow through $5 million over the course of the rest. I'm 32 now. Let's say I make it to 82. Fuck it. I'm not even sure if I'd want to make it longer than that. But let's call it, let's say another 50 years just to make it nice, clean, you know? I'm going to be regretting this episode when I'm 82. Be like, damn, that's all the time I gave myself. You know, what's that? 100,000 a year? Okay, that's like a normal, like that's $100,000 a year is like a decently well-off guy's income. So that's for one person. For me. That's not even for my family, by the way. Like $100,000 for a family income is like literally average. I think the average median income of the United States is $50,000 for a person. So with $5 million and no other investments or anything like that, I could live off of that for the next 50 years as with a family as an average American. Okay, that's a great deal for me. But for a city? $5 million for a city? How many people are in Flint, Michigan? Maybe they'll say that on this Wikipedia page that supposedly has all the information I could ever want. Okay. Flint, Michigan has a population of 81,252 as of the 2020 census. Okay, but this decision was made 10 years ago, apparently. So let's assume that there was like, you know, most cities grow in population. Actually, I'm assuming that Flint, Michigan has shrunken in population over the past 10 years. And I feel like that's a pretty safe estimate considering that they had no water for the past 10 years. What was it in 2010? I typed in 2101. 2010. Probably had better water in 21. Well, let's see. Okay. So I was correct. The population of Flint, Michigan has shrunken significantly over the past 10 years. In the 2020 census, they had just over 81,000. However, in the 2010 census, they had over 102,000. So the city has lost roughly 20% of its population over the past decade. So this decision was made obviously 10 years ago. So let's work off of the 100, let's call it 100,000 people. It's a city of 100,000 people. That's not a very big city at all. Baltimore is shrinking. We used to be over 1 million. I think we're just under 600,000 now. Philly's like 1.3 million or something. New Orleans is 300,000. So Flint, Michigan is a fairly small city, 100,000. I think my hometown of Towson, suburb of Baltimore, is like in the 50,000 range. So they're like double the size of Towson, basically. Population, 100,000. $5 million for 2 years. I shouldn't even need... You know what? I'm not even going to use a calculator for that. I can't believe I was about to use a calculator for that. That is $50 per person. Hear me? You hear me? For 2 years, by the way. That's $25 per year. Which is roughly $1 per month. No, sorry, $2 per month. $2 per month. Flint, Michigan, 10 years ago in 2014, decided that they would switch over the water supply for their city from the Detroit water supply to the Flint River. And this would save the city an estimated $5 million, which of course it did not. We'll talk about that in a moment, because even that didn't happen. But ideally, what was to happen was that the city would save $5 million over the next 2 years. Wow. That doesn't really seem worth it to me, does it? They said it was temporary. They said the ultimate plan was to move over to Lake Huron, which I guess is better. I don't know. I've never been to Lake Huron. I barely am convinced I'm pronouncing it correctly. But I feel like they could have just stayed on Detroit's system for the next 2 years if the plan was to, in 2 years, make their permanent supply Lake Huron. They should have, if it were up to me, if I was part of the Flint, Michigan City Council, which I'm sure many of you are now sitting here going, geez, I wish you were. I would have said, you know what, guys? I see you trying to save $2 per year per person for our city over the next 2 years. But why don't we just not do that? And just start working on the whole Lake Huron thing now. In fact, get this. We could probably save a bunch of money by not building all the necessary infrastructure that is required to switch over to this temporary Flint River water supply in the first place, because I'm sure that wasn't free. Right? Now, look, I'm sure that all this math was done. I'm sure that the $5 million was factoring in for even after they built the stuff. It would still save them $5 million more dollars. But the point is that $5 million for a city is not a lot, especially when it's over the course of 2 years, and especially when it backfires into the worst infrastructure disaster in American history. Not very worth it, Flint. Not very worth it. But the bigger point here is that you did this to you. You guys remember that old 90s cartoon? That they would show you, not the cartoon, the 90s show. It was like a video that they would show you in high school or middle school when you took like your don't do drugs classes. Dare. As all the super ironic cool kids wear the shirts now. And there was that song. It was like, the kid gets like addicted to drugs. And he's like, who did this to me? I did this to me. And it was like a song. Who did this to me? I did this to me. Flint, Michigan, who did this to you? You did this to you. And I'm not saying that means that the people of Flint, Michigan should not have water. I'm not saying that the state of Michigan and the nation of the United States should not step in and help you guys get water. However, I am saying that they are and have been doing that. Now, mind you, this is a massive undertaking, I should add. To repipe an entire city takes a long time. Can you imagine that? Every single water pipe in the entire city is corroded and contaminated. It may arguably take longer to repipe a city than to pipe it in the first place. Now, I don't know if it takes 10 years, At least to get the main ones, right? I don't know. I'm not a pipe guy. But the point here is that if it was being done right, it's possible that it would probably be done by now. Right? Maybe. 10 years? 100,000 people? However many square miles? You can repipe a city. 10 years? Especially if it's like priority number one, which I would have to imagine it would be. I can't find the articles right now at this very moment. Perhaps I will find them later and edit them in. But I have looked into this subject over the years, as I've had over a decade to do so. And I have come across numbers in the billions, as I recall. Billions of dollars have been put towards this effort. Far more than the $5 million that was supposed to be saved by the city, which caused this whole thing in the first place. So, this decision by the city of Flint, Michigan, in an effort to save themselves $5 million over 2 years, has cost the city of Flint, Michigan, and the state of Michigan, and the United States government combined in the multiple billions of dollars so far, and it still hasn't been fixed. Let that sink in. Because the insinuation is, like the insinuation is for everything in the world, this cartoon, Rocky and Bullwinkle, evil Boris and Natasha, switching the train tracks and tying the city of Flint, Michigan up to the train tracks. Ah, ha, 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 ha. Natasha, we're going to switch the water supply. Ah, ha, 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 ha. Oh, no, Rocky. They're switching the water supply in Flint, Michigan. We need to stop them. Help! Rocky, help! Help! Michigan, help us! Flint, Michigan's in trouble. That must be how you guys see it. Oh no! You did this to you, Flint! What are you doing? What have you done? And now, we're trying to fix it. I don't understand. Never mind. Look. We're getting way off track. I didn't really have a track today. But it's just this the best word for it is incurious. This incurious way of looking at the world, where there is a narrative that's given to you that seems pretty cut and dry. It's basically how every war has been sold to every population over the course of history. We're the good guys, they're the bad guys. It's that simple. World War I, the axis of evil. They're evil. This whole country over here just happens to be evil. And we happen to be good. Has any country ever entered into a war and said, nah, we're being pretty shady on this? No, we're totally in the wrong, but who gives a fuck? No country does that. Every war and every person who's ever fought, every country that is, who's ever engaged in a war has told their people that they were in the right. They have to. And for the most part, that's all it takes. Hey, they're not us. Couldn't help but notice you're not me. So why the hell should I side with you? I side with me and us. Pretty simple. I'm a Ravens fan. I get it. Couldn't help but notice I'm not from fucking Pittsburgh. Okay? So fuck the Steelers. That's all I need to know when it comes to football. Global wars. Maybe a little bit more insight could be relevant. Who knows? Not for most people. Whatever.